You are listening to Quality Time, a podcast designed to support Nebraskan providers through their journey with Step Up to Quality. I am your host, Colleen Schmidt. Get ready to listen as we prepare to elevate each other as we step up to quality. Welcome back, everyone. Today, our topic is a fun one. We are going to be digging in and learning about the Farm to Early Care and Education in Nebraska program. And our guest is Sarah Meyer. So Sarah, welcome. Thanks for saying yes. We're happy to have you. Thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit about what you do and what your role is, and then maybe even a little bit about what you want to share with how you perhaps got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello. I'm so thankful to be on here and happy to get to talk about farm to early care and education today. I work at Nebraska Department of Education in the farm to school area as a farm to school specialist. Farm to school is an overarching term that we use for basically farm to everything, I say a lot of times. So that includes farm to early care and education, or farm to ECE as we call it a lot. My background is actually in nutrition and dietetics. I'm a graduate of UNL. And so I was really drawn to food, obviously, which led me down that path. But I grew up in Norfolk, Nebraska, so a pretty rural area, lots of farming communities up there. So that kind of drew me to the farming side of things. And then I've always been drawn to organizations that focus on improving the lives of children, and that's really my focus demographic. So farm to school just checks all my boxes in that way, and that's kind of what pulled me here. I used to contract with Nebraska Department of Education during grad school, and a farm to school position became available, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. So yeah, my job is a farm to school specialist. So basically I connect Nebraska schools and early care and education sites with local farmers and ranchers and foods so that they can serve those and offer them in their food programs.
Such a cool job. How long have you been doing what you do?
Yeah, so I've actually only been in the farm to school specialist position since last May. So May of 2022 I started, or 23. I started, and then, I had contracted with Nebraska Department of Ed for 2 years prior and worked on projects similar and in the same office as farm to school. But I really got to dive into the work the last 8 to 10 months. So
cool. I love it. And I'm also a contractor with Nebraska Department of Ed, and it's just a good supportive place to be. We do cool things across the state. But I shared with you, Sarah, before we hit record that I don't know a lot about this program, and I want you to talk to our listeners and me. I'm equally as excited to learn. Give our listeners a little info on what this is. You kind of gave us a teaser about it, but tell us a little bit more about exactly what Farm to ECE is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Farm to ECE, there are 3 really core elements of it. So there's site gardens, education, and procurement. So each of those kind of spans a wide range of things. Gardens, obviously, you meet an ECE site where they are. Some places have availability to have huge in-ground gardens. Some have raised beds. And some maybe do planters in a windowsill or have one plant inside that they can grow or focus on. And so helping sites know what types of gardens they can have, what things to plant, and then also kind of leading into our education portion, but how to interact in those spaces with young children, how to get them involved, what's age appropriate for them to be doing in the gardens, and how can you really dive in there, and lots of lessons with that with, I can go into this later, but all the benefits of getting kids involved in the garden and the kitchens and those different areas. So that's kind of the garden side of things. Then you have the education pillar. And so this is teaching a lot about agricultural education and then also nutritional education. So we kind of connect from the farm to the kids. How does it get to you? how does local food end up on your plate? What does that look like when we're putting it in the ground? What do seeds need to thrive? How is that related to you living in Nebraska as a kid? Where can you see this happening in your communities? So a lot of education components there, nutritious eating, which also leads into our procurement side of things. So procurement, basically just how we're getting the food. So we talk a lot about local food. Obviously, that's our emphasis, getting Nebraska grown and produced products into schools and early care and education sites. And so local is really the sites set up their definition for it. So it can look different for different products. You might have zucchini coming from a garden next door, or you might have beef from just the state that you like to source and highlight. And so it looks different. And then once you have that food, we provide a lot of resources on what you can do with it. Again, how can you get kids involved in the kitchen and cooking? We have recipes with a lot of our local products so that you can integrate that in. So just a lot of resources around food, local food specifically, Nebraska food, and getting it into sites and centers for kids to interact with, to learn about, and ultimately to eat and enjoy.
That's so cool. You have a cool job. So I want to talk more about the kids. First question I have is, what age groups are you kind of serving? Is it anyone, or like what's kind of the age range that this is geared for?
Yeah, absolutely. So our current offerings for Farm to School have been primarily focused for K to 12 students. But actually, when I was hired on, part of my position was to kind of grow this early care and education side of Farm to School. And so we are running a pilot right now that is testing a lot of newly designed resources. And those are aimed at our 0 to 5 with a pretty big emphasis on like the 3 to 5 range, but continuing to expand there. So a lot of those resources, and I can talk a little bit more about them as well, but they'll be coming available once they've kind of gone through this initial stage with those pilot sites. So pilot is just kind of a program that we're testing out to get a lot of feedback on our resources, working with our partners to make sure that we're hitting all the right boxes, but looking to having those resources readily available in the fall of 2024.
Awesome. And I love that your mission and part of the pilot is to really bring it to birth through 5, because I could see a lot of benefits for teaching very little kids about why this matters and how it is meaningful to them and their life as a healthy Nebraskan, all those things. What about, I have another kind of question, and if you don't know the answer, it's okay, but what about family childcare providers? Is this something that they can also seek out?
Yeah, absolutely. So our pilot that we're running right now, actually, we have a majority of family care providers in it. We also have centers, we have Head Starts and early Head Starts, and we have preschool classrooms that are affiliated with their school systems. So we are, anyone that's running a program like this can do it. So yep, the resources are really plug and play, and kind of aim to meet you at where you're at, whatever you want to do with school. Yep.
I think that's so exciting. And I love that everybody has a seat at the table and this is for all. Let's talk a little bit more about the kids. So what are the benefits for our kids when they become involved in farm to early care and education? Like, how does this impact specifically our youngest learners?
Yeah, absolutely. I could go on and on about the benefits of farm to early care and education. I think it's really all encompassing. So first, I know I talked about gardens. If you're able to have a garden at your site, there are so many benefits to getting young kids involved in gardening. There's so many learning opportunities there. There's, science lessons with weather patterns or what plants need to grow. Lots of connections there. There's a lot of patience in gardening and even some delayed gratification that they can practice while they run out to the plants every day to see if they have fruits or veggies are available yet. All different types of fine and gross motor skills. Lots of sensory lessons and input in the garden. We have a lot of sites that have gardens, and they say some of the most sought after areas are just the ones that are filled with dirt. And kids just love to get into the dirt and play, and they know what to do when they get there. They want that sensory input. So we know we have a lot there. Then once even getting the food, if you're getting it from a garden or just sourcing it locally and having that whole food product, we know there's a lot of opportunities to cook and joining in the kitchen. Again, those fine and gross motor skills can really be practiced in the kitchen, peeling, cutting, washing. There's some great USDA resources that'll be on our website that just kind of share what's appropriate for kids to be helping with in the kitchen at 2 years old, at 3 years old. That's not too little to get them in there and get them involved in helping with those things. And we know that kids are more likely to try foods that they grow and that they help prepare in the kitchen. So if you have some picky eaters, this is always a great spot to try a new intervention and get them involved in that way. We have little stickers with all of our resources that say, like, I tried carrots, or I tried zucchini today. And so they are really motivated by that, we've found, and they love to go home and brag that they got to try something new at the site that day. So, and then health benefits like consuming nutritious foods, like you mentioned, we have so many lifelong habits that are developed at such a young age. And so just making them aware of the foods and kind of sparking that passion for food and nutritious eating, and letting them know, Nebraska is an agriculture state. I think 1 in 4 jobs in Nebraska is tied to agriculture. So setting them up for a lifetime of, loving that about their community and learning about that in their communities where they are, I think is really important, and rooting us back in that. So
beautifully said. And when you're saying Nebraska is an agricultural state, I'm in Omaha. I have children of my own, and I think sometimes they don't realize that. You only know what you know, and if you grow up in the big city and don't have exposure to other parts of Nebraska, I could see how this is a really good learning opportunity for kids in urban environments as well as rural. I love what you said about the dirt. And how sometimes that's the most popular place for little kids to be, is just in digging in the dirt. And I will say, for me, that is like therapy. This sounds so weird, but it's true. I love to pull weeds. I love to plant. I love to have my hands in the dirt. There's something about that brings you back to being a little kid.
Yes.
And having this. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I think that's just such a great thing about a lot of this is it's not anything, complex that we're trying to add to these programs. I know that, early care sites have a lot on their plates already, and it's just, let's just bring the kids along to these things, bring them outside in the garden, bring them in the kitchen. They can do it alongside you. And yeah, I think, like you said, it's therapeutic to be out there and just to get your hands a little dirty, and that's all right. That's why we're here. And you might, the adult, have to actually tend the vegetables a little more, but they'll be right there with you digging something up for sure.
Yep. I'm happiest if my feet are bare and my hands are dirty. There's nothing better. I really do believe that. And I believe in everything you said about the benefits for young children, the learning benefits, the sensory benefits, the health and nutrition benefits, the benefit of realizing that they are a big part of what happens here in Nebraska. Like they're our future. I know that's a cliche thing to say, but we want to build good stewards of our state. And I think your program's an amazing way to do that. Tell us a little bit more info, like how can I join? Let's say I'm either a family provider listening to this podcast, or maybe I'm a preschool director or a community-based center director. How do I learn more information, and how do I get in touch with you all to start digging in the dirt with my kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Farm to Early Care and Education in Nebraska, we have no formal sign-up process. So all our resources are free, and they're available on our Nebraska Department of Education website. We have a specific Farm to Early Care and Education page on the website. That has what our toolkit that's available currently for our Farm to Early Care and Education providers. So lots of resources, some from us, some from USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. They have a lot of great resources on Farm to Early Care and Education, as well as National Farm to School Network. There's resources on our page for them as well. But our toolkit right now really has some helpful tips on getting started, where to look to buy local. It can be difficult to, or just a different challenge to start the process of buying local foods, especially if you're used to just getting to the grocery store, getting what you need and getting home. It might take a little more mental lift in the beginning to find those sources around you. And there's also a real tie-in to seasonality. So getting in connection with what foods are in season, depending on the time of year, and what you can get locally might look different, is going to look different in May versus December. So kind of planning for that. We have recipes on there, and some gardening resources as well. Farm to School also has a Harvest of the Month program. Our Harvest of the Month program, this is also available on our Nebraska Department of Education website. It will be soon up to 30 different local items that we feature. And for each item, we offer just a variety of resources so you can highlight that if you're serving it that month. So let's say, it's summer and berries are going to be added soon. So strawberries are in season. You get them in, the summer, and you're ready to serve them. We have a lot of resources like newsletters that you can send home to your families so they can continue conversations at home. We have posters you can hang up in your classroom, those stickers that I mentioned where kids can proudly display that they got to try something. We have recipes to help you when you get that local product. Maybe you're not used to working with a whole butternut squash. So what do you make that into? We have coloring pages and trivia cards. So lots of different resources for once you kind of get that food into your site, just getting your kids involved. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot more is coming in the fall this year. We are working with some partners with Nebraska Ag in the Classroom, with Farm Bureau Foundation, and writing some 12 sets of lessons that are focused on 12 locally grown products in Nebraska. And so those are actually tied with the Nebraska Early Learning Guidelines, and just different, lessons that focus on those things that I talked about earlier. This comes from a farm in Nebraska, and how does it get there? How does it grow? Different kind of lessons with that. So really excited about those coming out in the fall, as well as a gardening guide. Like I mentioned, just kind of vamping up our resources we already have on how to get kids involved. Same with a taste test guide for our early care audiences, how to do maybe a small sample of something new if it's a product kids have never had before. So lots more coming in the fall. But right now, our website, our NDE website, is probably the best place to go and find resources. Or please always just reach out to me and I can get you connected to the right places to go.
Awesome, Sarah. And you mentioned it's our favorite word. It's free, right?
Yep. Yes. All our resources are free. Yep. Ready to download. Yep.
Cool. This is something I'm so glad I've learned about because I think it could be a big support to a lot of our providers here in Nebraska and a fun way to involve the kids. What a cool opportunity. So thanks for sharing all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we know a lot of people are already doing the work. Maybe they just need something new to spice it up.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are more the expert than I am here, and they've already got great systems in place where they know what's up with these things. So just some new ways to add it in and get some variety.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. And I love how you mentioned there's some lessons that are already connected with our early learning guidelines. Like it just sounds like you're getting a lot of ducks in a row. So it's very easy for providers to access it and actually spice it up, what they might already have been using or doing, and maybe have some new resources. I love it. I'm so glad I got to meet you and speak with you about this because I really knew very, very little that this was happening. I thought it was more geared for, middle schoolers or big kids, and it's for everybody. Our theme for this podcast season is advocacy. So I want you to share with our listeners how, or maybe what role does the farm to early care and education have when we think about advocacy? How does it connect?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And there's a lot of, definitions and pathways of advocacy. I think within self-advocacy, like we talked about, setting up those lifelong habits in kids and just setting them up for a base of that, cooking, gardening, cleaning up, those basic skills. Community-wise, I mentioned it before, but 1 in 4 Nebraska jobs relate to agriculture. So finding those ways to connect with our communities and our state through farm to ECE just makes sense. Setting these kids up to love food and agriculture, they can stay in our communities and continue to make them better in the future, and just have that respect for themselves and what they eat, how it gets from the farm to their plate. And just relating that to Nebraska as a whole. And then I think also too, food is our lives. We need food, and food and nutrition security too are just such big topics. And this is one avenue to really promoting healthy, safe, affordable food in a lot of settings, especially for our littlest eaters that are, setting up those habits. And I think something that's really unique about farm to school and farm to early care and education is when you do see it in legislature and things that are coming out, it's one of the most commonly supported bipartisan efforts. And so I think it's something that we can all really come together and agree on, is that we want local food for our kids. We want healthy, nutritious foods for them. And these local food systems are a way to get that to them that everyone can kind of agree on. Sounds, really common sense, and it just clicks for a lot of people when they hear it. So those are just a few ways I think it kind of relates and makes the most sense.
I think you're exactly right. And we can all agree on food.
Yes.
We want good food and we want healthy food for our babies. It's a bipartisan issue. 100% agree. Let's start with food. And I love also that you mentioned it's self-advocacy, it's community, it's about food and nutrition security. All those ways is how your program is supporting advocacy for our kids and families here in Nebraska. So I'm so appreciative of you, Sarah, for all the work you do and joining on this podcast and sharing it. So thanks for joining with us today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love getting to chat anytime about farm to early care and education. So please, anytime.
Everybody look Sarah up. She shared that they're on the Nebraska Department of Education website, and you can find more information about farm to early care and education there too. So thanks again. And thanks everyone for spending quality time with us. Please join again as we chat about future topics to support our Nebraskan providers on their journeys with Step Up to Quality. Until next time, bye-bye.